right, Miss Edwina B, Miss Cuckoo for Cocoa Pops. Listen, y'all, listen, y'all go to the dollar store, right? And buy me like 20 pair of glasses, right? I think they're $1 quarter now, right? And give me 175 strength, right? So I can put them all over my house and my car at my job. Because guess what? I'm going to use what I have in order to do what I need to do. So, welcome to Free to Hope Conversation with Edwina B. That's me, y'all, Miss Cuckoo for Cocoa Pops. Why? Because my God said no matter what you think about Edwina, no matter what you feel about Edwina, no matter what's going on with Edwina, no matter how you try to cut her down, chop her up, spit her out, it don't matter. She's one of my children, and I'm going to ask her, no, not even ask her, I'm going to make her rise this morning because she is obedient. She yields to the Spirit. She practiced these spiritual principles in all her affairs. She has given her life to me because I am the only one who brought her out of that muck and mire from underneath that parked car. So I have prepared her to sit before you to share something that you need to hear on how to be set spiritually free from recovery, emerge empowered, only to give hope to others, help others prosper equally. Therefore, Edwina, go do what you do. Lord, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. I praise you, Lord. I give you the honor, the praise, the glory, the hallelujah, the worship, and most importantly, the acknowledgement. That's all he wants. He wants the acknowledgement that you know, I know that he is. And there's nothing else before, after, during, in the event of, y'all know what I'm talking about, right? I get so excited when I think about how he delivered me from underneath that parked car 34 plus years ago with co-occurring disorders of mental illness and substance abuse. Yes, getting high with my own stepson, doing all kind of sexual favors for my own stepson. At the age of 34, a crackhead, a prostitute, an alcoholic, a liar, manipulator, a thief. I even committed murder. Yes, as a prostitute, I had an abortion, and I consider that murder. And so when we look at today's topic of repairing the damage, we are going to go deep today. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to share some of my experience, my strength, and my hope that I have received over the last 34 plus years from spiritual tools, resources, principles, the 5 agreements by the Weeds family, the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, within a 12-step fellowship. The late Dr. Benjamin Trimby Brown's Community Communications Corporation, under the hospice of Spiritual Revival Hour, where I began to hear songs of inspiration, consolation, meditation, and most importantly, education. The gospel songs that I just, have infiltrated my life and has made a difference. And also the transformational teachers by Dr. Sonia Strickland, and also recently Lugenia of the Trailblazers up in Philadelphia. And so I continue to seek and hunger and thirst for spiritual wisdom so that I can make sure I apply them to all earthly matters for the purpose of being prepared to deal with any and all things. Let me share one thing with you about me. Because I know who I am now and I know whose I am now, I'm not going to give anything or anybody that much power ever again to put me back underneath that parked car. Okay? Did you hear what I said? Because I know who I am and whose I am, I will not give the power to anything or anybody to put me back underneath that parked car. That means I won't go back to smoking crack. I won't go back to drinking alcohol. I won't go back to prostitution. I won't go back to all of those things that bonded me, right? Because of my co occurring disorders of mental illness and substance abuse. But I do it one day at a time. One day at a time, sweet Jesus. That's all I'm asking for you. Give me the strength one day at a time. So, using my spiritual principles, tools, and resources, I have learned to acknowledge that my Creator gives us this day only, right? Our daily bread. My pastor, Christopher Allen Bullock, the other Sunday talked about the bread for the physical and the bread for life, which is the Bible, and said one feeds our physical, but one feeds our spirituality. So I would rather eat of the bread from the Bible, but I know I need to eat bread for my physical strength, right? All right, so let me give you a couple of updates. I know I do that, right? So I have been on autopilot for a few months now. As I told y'all, I was asked to come out of retirement to work for Divine Light. And just the name itself resonates in my spirit with the owner, Sakina Dean Johnson, who I met in Philadelphia. And as a result of joining Divine Light, IOP and OP Recovery Treatment Center, I've been there for over 3 months to help reorganize, restructure, and to bring back what should have been the success of this awesome organization that helped people who were and are just like me with co-occurring disorders. And so we had to prepare for a state audit. Every organization, every nonprofit has to do that. And so we had to prepare these last 3 months for an audit. And when I say I was and somewhat still am on autopilot, it was as if I ate, dreamt, slept, walked, ran, Divine Light, trying to get this stuff together with an awesome team at the office located at 1016 Delaware Avenue. But simultaneously, I was also on autopilot with my niece / sister, Helen Sabrina Hall, who recently passed away last month, and we had her services this past Saturday. So simultaneously dealing with both of those situations, I thank God for giving me the strength, the courage, the wisdom, the know-withal, and the steadfastness I needed to accomplish the God-given desired outcome. All right. And so, however, my body has gone through it. And so for the last week or so, building up to the end of the work for Divine Light audit, and also the memorial service on Saturday for my niece, I felt like I had crashed. Now, I don't know if any of you ever been drunk or high or just totally exhausted in one way, shape, form, or fashion, that you just crashed. I related to a similar situation when I was in my addiction, when all the drugs was gone, when all the crack was gone, when all the alcohol was gone, when I couldn't prostitute anymore because I was too tired or too funky or too sore. I had been up for days and nights at a time, and I just crashed. And that's how I've been feeling these last couple of days. I am going to claim it that we were successful in the audit by the state of Delaware to continue with the Bond Lights operation. And I also, good morning. I am doing my podcast right now, and I'll call you right back. Okay, dear. Bye bye. And so, ironically, that was my regional director, Cecilia Velasquez, right? And she too was only there for a month earlier than I. And she and I took the bull by the horns and we got this program up and running. And I'm going to say, claim it, that we succeeded in passing our audit. And so, in addition to that, the success of my sister niece memorial service with all the anticipation and hype, it went very, very well. But let me share with you how, and it relates to repairing the damage, how, during my addiction, we as alcoholic drug addicts suffering from co-occurring disorders, we do a lot of damage to our mind, our body, and our spirit. And so one of the things that I realized during this transition was after everything was completed and I felt like I had crashed, right? Wouldn't you know that for 3 nights in a row, I had a drug dream that I was using? Yes. The first night I was getting ready to smoke crack in a stem, and I overloaded the stem with crack and put the whatever, trying to find ashes to put on top of it, you know what I mean, and then top it off with more crack. This is a dream, right? And so in that particular dream, I didn't get to smoke the crack, but I was in the dream preparing for it. And then I went to a store the other day. Now, this is after my body just had crashed from these 2 instances, right? And so, in these stores, they got all kinds of drug paraphernalia and whatnot. And so I remember going into the store 2 days in a row for, to buy something. And any other time, I wouldn't pay no attention, right? I know what's there, and I just don't pay attention to it, right? But somehow or another, the enemy drew me to the glass cabinet where it had all these drug pipes, right? And so I'm looking at them, and seeing how fancy they got with them, and how this one must be used for that one. In other words, I was giving it energy, if you know what I mean, right? So I didn't think it bothered me or whatever. So I got 34 years. I'm good, right? But the fact that I was fantasizing there, analyzing, okay? So that was another warning. So then I went back the next day, and I was going up and down the aisle, and I saw right there on the corner a box of baking soda, right? Now, if you know anything about smoking crack, right, and I hope you don't, but if you do, we use baking soda to separate the real cocaine from the additives. And so here's another thing. I'm thinking I'm, pinching some out and putting some in the bottle, giving it energy, fantasizing about it, right? Just like that. 34 years in the program, okay? And so that particular night, I smoked crack all night long in my dream. And guess who was selling me the crack? Chris Brown. He was selling me caps, and I had $10. I was $2 short to get 3 caps. So, I'm just saying to you all how people like us who are in recovery, the enemy has not gone anywhere. The enemy is waiting patiently for people who are in recovery, to have the opportunity, right, and the desire, right, to just give up, give in, right? And so when the opportunity appears along with the desire, some of us fall victim to it. And so I thank my God for being vigilant and knowing that I have an incurable disease of alcoholism, right? When we talk about repairing the damage, right, there's some things that cannot be repaired due to the circumstances and situations from which they were developed. So with the disease of alcoholism, some diseases are just incurable. And so one day at a time, I can never drink again. I don't want to ever drink again because I know I have a fatal disease. Because my information that I got through my spiritual tools, resources, and principles have taught me that if I get to a point where I'm too hungry, too angry, too lonely, too tired, it's called halt, that I need to increase my meetings, increase my prayers, increase my service to others, because I don't want to give in to this patient and waiting enemy, right? And so as a result, right, with those dreams back to back, I thank God that I woke up and had not used, but let me tell you, I was getting it on, right? And just like any other time when I talk to you about my pattern, that these individuals helped me in my recovery with, to recognize that the pattern of drinking and drugging and prostituting always ended up the same. I was either going to jail in an institution or I was going to die. Now, I did the first two, right? And I could have if God chose to not be here, but he chose to let me live, right? And so what I didn't realize, was that in the environment in which I was working and being of service to others and being around family, that I thought my body was going through like a crash, right? But then my body aches so bad. I like, it's still aching. I mean, I know I have my shoulder thing, but it's like somebody just used me as a punching bag. And so the other day when I went to Divine Light, they said that one of the houses probably all have COVID. One of my staff members' family had COVID, and I didn't think nothing of it. I just thinking I was just run down and crashing and all. I was just tired, right? Come to find out, yes, I took a test and I tested positive for COVID. And one of the things, and it's not the first time I've had COVID, even though I've had the shots and everything, but it's been a while. I probably need to take some more, right? And you can still get it even though you do have the shots. And so I contacted my staff and, let them know. And I contacted my supervisor to let her know that I will be working from home. But I just wanted to kind of give y'all the process of people who are in recovery from any and all things. There is a process to healing. There's a process into repairing the damage. There is a process and being rejuvenated, being restored. There is a process, right? And if I rush the process, or if I take the process for granted, or I don't want to accept the process, then I will continue to cause more harm and more damage, right? So I'm going to be working from home today. I'm going to attend my AA meeting by phone, right? Because I will not allow the enemy of COVID to keep me from doing what my God has woken me up to do. And that's to sit before you, right? And also to attend my meeting and in one way, shape, form, or fashion, continue my work load and be of service to other people. All right. So that's the update. Are you ready for our topic today? Okay. Let's get to our topic today. All right. Okay. So y'all know the free to hope thing. All right. From recovery, we emerge empowered to give hope to others, help others prosper equally. All right. So let's talk about this. Repairing the damage is the topic for August the 14th from the AA Daily Reflection. All right. So before I get into that, I always like to pause and say, when you hear the title, Repairing the Damage, what comes to your mind? While you think about it, I'll take a drink of coffee. Seriously, what comes to your mind when you hear the three words, repairing the damage? Repairing, meaning something is not working, something has broke, something needs fixing, you know what I mean? Something needs to be put back together. You are repairing the two, repairing, okay? A specific thing or a specific situation, okay? So you are repairing the what? The damage. What kind of damage? Psychological damage, physical damage, spiritual damage, right? Materialistic damages, right? What comes to your mind? Putting something back together, repairing the damage, right? And how did the damage happen? Was it by you, or was it by something else, or was it by somebody else? But in other words, we are repairing the damage that has been caused. Okay? All right. So now that you understand the title, let's go to what it says. It says, we attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. And this is from the Big Book, page 76. Now, the person in recovery shares their experience. He says, making a list of people I had harmed was not a particularly difficult thing to do. They had showed up in my fourth step inventory. People towards whom I had resentment, real or imagined, and whom I had hurt by acts of retaliation. For my recovery to be thorough, I believed it was not important for those who had legitimately harmed me to make amends to me. What is important in my relationship with God is that I stand before Him knowing I have done what I can to repair the damage I have done. Oh my, oh my. Let's get into this bad boy. Okay, so now, we have been talking about step 8, right? Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all, right? And so I asked you a few days ago to look over your life to see where you have caused harm to a person, to an institution, an agency. You have caused harm in some way, shape, form, or fashion. If you look back over your life as far back as you can you recall some damage that you have caused to others? You have caused them it harm. Okay. And so when in the eighth step, they ask us to go back in our fourth step, right? Our fourth step inventory says made a searching and fearless more inventory of ourselves. So in our fourth step, we go back to where those attitudes, ideas, behaviors were first formulated, by whom, in what situation, what circumstances, right? And how they have perpetuated throughout our lives, even up until now. The Uiz family calls it, through their 5 agreements, domestication. We were taught what to say, we were taught how to act, we were taught what to believe, so forth and so on, okay? And so we became robotic in a lot of areas of our life, repeating and imitating what we heard and what we saw, right? And so as a result of me becoming a drug addict, alcoholic, and obtaining the disease of alcoholism and all its associated behaviors, ideas, attitudes, right? And so as a result of that, underneath that parked car is where I had my one and only knee bowing experience at the age of 34. So in doing my fourth step, and I shared with you how, let's start with the word resentment. And they say with human beings, that's one of the top character defects that we have. We have resentments beyond belief, right? And so what was my first resentment? That over the years bothered me. I justified it. I rationalized it. I ignored it. I fed it. I remembered it. I rationalized it, right? And at some point in time, the question becomes, and what, so what, now what? What's the next right thing to do? But since I've been in recovery, the question ends with, what's the next right thing? What's the next right spiritual thing to do? So the next right spiritual thing to do is doing my fourth step. I'm just going to give you one example like I gave you before. I had a resentment against my mother. Yes. Why did I have a resentment against my mother? So I identified the character defect as resentment. I identified who I had it against, my mother. Why did I have the resentment against my mother? Because my mother got too much attention from my dad. What feelings generated from that resentment that your mom got too much attention from your dad? Feelings of jealousy, envy, my low self-esteem, not being enough, right? And so, okay, you identified the feelings. Now, what part did you play in having a resentment against your mother because she was getting too much attention from your dad that made you have feelings of jealousy, envy, retaliation, anger, all of that? What part did you play in it? The part that I played in it, right, was I would imitate my mother. I would purposely watch what she said and what she did to get my dad's attention. The part I played in it was I held I withdrew my affection towards my mother. Yeah. I was unable to in some cases hug her, hold her hand. So that's the part I played in it, right? So do you get my drift, right? So when we get to the 8th step, and it says, made a list to all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all, right? My mother was the second person on the list, right? Who was the first? Me. But let me stick with my mother. Okay. So my mother is the second person on my list, right? I had caused harm to my mother. And so when it talks about repairing the damage I had caused, right, allows me to know that I identified a person, and it could have been the other one was an IRS. I identified, what the character defect was, right? I identified the feelings, the situation. I identified the part that I played in it. And so when it talks about here, it says we attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. Okay, so we attempt to sweep away the debris, right, which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. So let me continue with the my mother as the one I caused harm to, and I needed to repair the damage. So over the years, I had an aunt named Aunt Margaret, and she's in the picture back here, right? I had a maternal connection more to my aunt than my own mother. I loved my mother, but I didn't like my mother. I loved my Aunt Margaret. Yes, I did. Okay. And so over the years of having that resentment against my mother, I tried to like sweep it away, and I'm not gonna, it was just I didn't understand it, but because until I got into recovery and knew what I was feeling and what I was thinking at the time, to some extent, I had some awareness, but not to the level of spiritual awareness of what I was doing and why. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Okay. And so, in other words, I was focusing more on self-will and not at all God's will. Okay. All right. And so, as I continued, right, to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves, it says, if we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Now, it's amazing how through my journey, through my process, and through what God has prepared me, molded me, shaped me to do, these two women who had the most impact on my life, I'm sure my aunt, who was childless, reveled in the fact that I looked just like her. I wanted to be just like her. And unknowingly to me, the reason why she selected me out of my mom's 6 kids was because I reminded her of her brother, my dad, who were virtually twins, but not twins, right? And so I, through the years, had conflicting feelings about both, right? I know I'm supposed to love my mother and like my mother and be like my mother, but I like Aunt Margaret and I like what she's doing and I feel closer to her. So you can see the confusion that I had as a child with having maternal feelings towards my aunt more than I had towards my own mother. And I know some of y'all can relate. I know it. And did you ever wonder why and whatever? Okay. And so my aunt, I could tell her anything. I shared my secrets with her, right? I let her know when, something wasn't right. With my mom, I'll wait till I see my Aunt Margaret, right? And it's amazing because so let me give you an example. The way I viewed my mother when I was growing up, My mother appeared to be passive and weak. I say that because my dad was a womanizer, my dad was an abuser, and my dad would beat my mom up and put her in the hospital and bring other women into the house. When my mom would leave my dad and take us to Granny's house, she would always go back, right? I saw that my mom couldn't stand up for herself, not understanding the dynamics. You understand me? And so I'm perceiving her as weak and not being able to what? Stand up to my dad. By the way, I worship the ground my dad walked on, right? And so there was confusion in the way I viewed my mother, whereas my aunt, she didn't have any children. She stood up to the men, you heard what I said? Men, right? She did what she wanted. She said what she wanted. She acted the way she wanted, right? Compared to my dad, who did the same way. And so I'm looking at both, right? The woman, the person who was, and the person, right? No, I want to be like my Aunt Margaret, right? I want to be like my dad. And it's ironic how through the years, I often wondered how both of them felt about our situation. And it wasn't until my TV talk show of Choosing a New Way of Life that I brought both of them on in an attempt to find out what the damage was and also how to repair it. You know what I mean? And so this is where that sentence comes from, where it says, right? If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. So the opportunity came for me to interview my mother and my aunt the same time on Channel 28 on the Spiritual Revival Hour with the late Benjamin Twinby Brown. Okay. And so I'm in the middle, and no, I'm not in the middle. They're sitting side by side. And so we got into the conversation, and I basically said, Mom, Aunt Margaret, I want to find out what you were thinking, what you were feeling about the two of your relationships and both of your relationships with me. And so my mother started by saying, listen, I had 6 kids. I needed all the help I could get, right? And so for Margaret to pick you, I had 5 others to deal with, right? And so that's how my mother viewed it in the beginning, right? And then I said, pause there. So Aunt Margaret, why did you pick me out of the 6? And my Aunt Margaret said, because you look just like my brother and ultimately me. So that was the reason why my aunt picked me, and the reason why my mom was okay with Aunt Margaret picking me, because she needed help. So again, not understanding this as a child, right? And so as the conversation went on, so I said, well, Mom, what were your thoughts about me spending time with Aunt Margaret? And my mother said, well, I wasn't totally comfortable and did not like the surroundings in which Margaret put you in. What do you mean, Mom? Well, I didn't like the surroundings, right? Your Margaret was a single woman, and she had this, she had that, she did this, she did that. And so I knew a lot about Margaret. And so I had some feelings about you being around her and what she might have been exposing you to. So I said, okay, pause. Margaret, how do you feel about what Mommy just said? And so my Aunt Margaret basically said, I didn't think nothing about that. Yes, and my Aunt Margaret called her mush. Yeah, okay. I'm helping, her out, and I have you, and I'm going to treat you like you're my own daughter, and so that means I'm going to take you where I go. I'm going to, you know what I mean? I'm going to treat you like my child. And my Aunt Margaret had Grandma Kemp, who would often babysit me while Aunt Margaret went out. Okay, so to make a long story short, with my Aunt Margaret, yes, she fed me, she clothed me, she took me shopping, she kept my hair done, right? She paraded me, right? And I went around her friends, and I went to Crystal Cave. I went to places that I wasn't able to go to with my family, my mother-in-law, right? But I also recognized that my aunt had a lot of men, Mr. Buck, Mr. Walter, Mr. This, Mr. That, right? And so as a child, I'm looking at all these different men that my aunt is around. I was like, wow, 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 Mr. Alfonso and all that kind of stuff. And then my aunt was also a barmaid. And so when she couldn't find a babysitter and didn't want me to stay at home, she would take me to the bar. We're talking about repairing the damage, but you have to go back and find out where the damage was caused. Okay. So my aunt, unknowingly to her, didn't think she was doing anything wrong in her perspective, right? But in my mother's perspective, I was being exposed to some things that my mother would not expose me to. But here is the hypocrite part, right? My mother used to have selling parties, right? And she would sell chicken and chitlins and liquor and beer, and then people would come to our house, and as a child we seeing things, and we seeing hands under the table. We, you know what I mean? We exposed to some things. So again, all right. So you get my drift. This is what I mean by being able to go back and evaluate where your attitudes, ideas, and behaviors were first formulated, right? And how they have perpetuated throughout your life. And I did that with my fourth step, which is why I was able to put my mother on my eighth step list. Okay. Just wanted to give you an example. Okay. So let's see what else it says, right? It says, remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any length for victory over alcohol, right? So as a result of having been exposed to things that I was exposed to, I learned prostitution. I learned that everything was based on conditions. I learned how to lie. I learned how to steal. I learned how to manipulate. I learned how to be promiscuous. I learned how to flirt. Yes. Yeah. And all of these things perpetuated throughout my life. So when I became a full-blown alcoholic and drug addict, right? Right? Or during the time I was progressing towards it, right? Those same attitudes and behaviors only increased. They were already there. The seed was already planted. The damage was already done. Okay? And so they were enhanced when I started drinking and drugging. I became more flirtatious. I became more promiscuous. I lied more. I stealed more. I manipulated more, right? Okay. And then when I became a full-blown alcoholic and drug addict and prostitute, I mean, come on. I became a prostitute before I even picked up a drink or a drug. Yep. Yes, I did. Watching my aunt. You want some of this? You got to give me some of this. Even my father conditioned me one time and said, he said something like, if you go to the store, if you do this, I'll give you 50 cents, right? So that's an exchange, conditions. So, you gotta really explore the seed that were planted, whether they were negative or positive. You know what I mean? The idea that everything has a condition. Even these teeth trying to fall out, right? All right, so let's go back here. And so here it says, right, remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol, right? And so underneath that parked car, when I hollered out to this God to take me out this life now or show me a better way at the age of 34, I had caused so much damage. I had caused so much damage. I felt worthless. I felt hopeless. I felt helpless. I felt empty. I couldn't understand what was wrong with me. And this is after my life flashed before me and all the damage that I had done to myself and damage I had done to others. Yeah. What was wrong with me? And so that's when I recognized I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And I cried out to a God that I heard about but didn't know personally to take me out this life or show me a better way. So when this God that I didn't know, kept me here from the beginning, when I recognized that he saved me for something, I was willing to do any and everything not to go back to that way of life ever again. I didn't know what was in front of me. I knew what was in back of me, including the damage that I had caused myself and others. I didn't want to do no more harm to myself or to others. I didn't want to go back. And so for me, these spiritual tools, resources, and principles were designed for me to repair the damage I caused to myself and to others as a result of having this disease of alcoholism and mental illness. Help me was my cry. I know I need help, but I want help. Do you understand me? I need to repair. I know I want to repair the damage that I have caused to me, but I don't know how. I don't know how, but help me, please. Right? And so as a result of this God that I now know helping me, I understand what it means to be willing to repair the damage we have caused. Okay? I got a few more minutes. All right, so let's go to what the person in recovery says. He says, making a list of people I had harmed was not a particularly difficult thing to do. Now, I have to pause there, right? Because for this person in recovery, it wasn't hard for him to make a list, right? And if I was to ask you, can you make a list of all the people you have harmed? Can you make a list of all the agencies or organizations you have harmed in one way, shape, form, or fashion? Some people can make bam, 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 bam. And some people may say, well, let me think about it, right? Okay. So even though I was willing to make the list, I shared earlier that my sponsor had me make a list, but had it in 3 columns. Those I was willing to make amends to, put them down. Those that I might make amends to, put them down. And those I will never make amends to and put them down. Here's the hit. I made the list. Not only the list, I also had to identify the situation. What happened? What part I played in it? What harm did I cause? and then become willing to make amends, direct or indirect amends, to make a wrong right. Okay, what part I had to do. All right, so it was easy for him, and it can be easy for you, right? They had showed up in my fourth step inventory, right? And I shared people towards whom I had resentments, my mom, real or imagined, and whom I had hurt by acts of retaliation, right? For my recovery to be thorough, I believed it was not important for those who had legitimately harmed me to make amends to me. Okay, so let me give you an example there. Let's go to the column where I will never make amends to the person that raped me, who helped grow up with me, right? Right? Who knew me and my family, right? Yes, I would never make amends to him, right? But after doing the first 7 steps and having prayed and understood the spiritual transformation of why I needed to put him on my 8th step on the last column, was I contributed to his reaction of me being flirtatious, me teasing, right? Me promising to give something that I really wasn't intended to do. So I caused harm. And therefore, I have to put him on the list because of what I did, not because of what he did to me. Do you understand that? Huh? I had to understand the part that I played in it, right? And so that's what that particular statement means. And that's the example I give, right? So then it says, what is important in my relationship with God is that I stand before him knowing I have done what I can to repair the damage I have done. What is important in my relationship with God is that I stand before him knowing I have done what I can to repair the damage I have done. And let me close with this. The repair of the damage I done to my mom, right? I wound up taking care of my mother while on hospice. I also was able to repair the damage I caused to my aunt for blaming her for showing me all that stuff, right? By taking care of her on hospice, right? And so it's amazing that my God knows everything about me before, during, and future, right? And I am able and willing and want to be relieved of all guilt, shame, remorse, right? I don't want to have to look over my back. I don't want to have to walk across the street when I see somebody. I don't want to have to avoid. That's not freedom. Freedom to me is from recovery, emerge empowered to give hope to others, help others prosper equally, right? I've been set free. I've learned how to forgive myself. I've learned how to repair the damage I've caused to myself. I've learned how to rid myself of the guilt and the shame by using these spiritual principles, tools, and resources, right? So when I learn to do these things for myself, I learned how to repair the damage in any and all situations that presents themselves, whether they're dead or not, whether the company went bankrupt or closed down. It doesn't matter. If anything haunts me, if anything comes back to my memory that I know I caused harm, I need to rectify that situation in one way, shape, form, or fashion. Total freedom, being transparent and authentic is my goal. And I am reaching it day after day after day because my creator, who can only do for me what no human being can do, prepared me, shaped me, molded me, right? Enabled me to sit before you to say, if he did it for me, he can do it for you. So let me ask you, are there any areas in your life where you need to repair the damage? Is there anywhere in your life where you need to make amends? Is there anywhere in your life where you have caused harm and you know it? So the eighth step only says, do this at work today. Do it during your break. Take a piece of paper and go back as far as you can to remember, to kind of recall where you lied on somebody, you gossip about somebody, you stole, you cheated, you know what I mean? You manipulated. Just begin to jot down some names, right? And put the situation and put what you did, right? And keep writing it day after day after day after day. If you need 3 columns, those I'm willing to make amends to, those I might make amends to, and even those I will never make amends to. Look, it's amazing how you put pen to paper, you will get to see yourself, right? And so try it. Now, let me close by saying, I love you, you love me. We are one big old family, with a great big hug and a kiss from me to you. Won't you say you love me too? Woo! I love you, and so does God. If it's His will that we be reunited tomorrow, He will say, rise, and then I'll see you. But if not, have a blessed day. Live on purpose. Make that list. Be willing to repair the damage, starting with yourself. What harm have you caused yourself? Are you living in your purpose? Are you walking towards your destiny? It's not too late. God is on sacred time. Man is on secular time. So get the step in with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, spiritual principles, tools, and resources that will bring about spiritual experiences, that will produce spiritual awakenings, and have you experience an unlimited amount of spiritual breakthroughs. Be safe. I love you.